Time to move to the question and answers, and the panel members will participate in this exchange. There is a microphone, 1, 2. So I see already one hand. Before you ask your question, if you could just present yourself briefly. Thank you.
Hi, good evening everyone. Thanks for the presentation. I am Senthil from Point Cook. So just had a question for the council first. So council was highlighting that we are short by around $800 million or something in terms of budget for infrastructure, etc. My simple question for the council is, we don't have still a proposal for the Point Cook Road fix even in the 2017-18 budget. My simple question for council is, why are we approving new estates on the Point Cook Road with all these things? This is a simple, straightforward question which my daughter was asking this weekend, right? She was asking this simple question. We want to know from the council.
Thank you. So that's not only a road-related question, it's a planning kind of question. So maybe, John, you feel comfortable giving the answer, or?
That is a.
Or you need help?
It's an excellent question, and one we get often, the issue of approval of development when the infrastructure might not be capable of dealing with it. I suppose the short answer is that much of the framework for development across Wyndham is linked to the precinct structure plans that I spoke about earlier. That's the predominant process that will set the standards about what can be developed and how it can be developed. And council participates in that process with the state government, led by the NPA.
Which is NPA?
I'm sorry, I should be there. It's called the Metropolitan Planning Authority. And they run that process for all growth councils. At the end of the day, there's effectively, I call it a mud map. It says this is what the roads, this is the type of use the land can be there, where open space will be, and so forth. Once those have been gazetted by the state government, council's role then is to ensure that when developers put an application into subdivide land, that they're consistent with that precinct structure plan, and that's our primary role, as well as the standards that they're proposing in terms of road widths and all those sorts of things are consistent with the requirements in those precinct structure plans. But we can't control how the market comes to us. It's the developers come to us when they want to develop, and as long as they're consistent with those precinct structure plans, our role is really to ensure that they are consistent with that and our standards. I'm not sure that Louis wants to.
I think the question is not answered, right? Like this simple, straightforward question. Straightforward question. Who is that? I don't know, like decision maker who is so clever to make this decision, and why, as council, actively objected this decision? That's my simple question.
All right, so what I might do, it's maybe ask our Director of Advocacy, Bill Forrest, who's with us tonight. He's not part of the panel, but he might be able to give a more straightforward answer to your question.
The simple answer to the simple question is council does not have the power to determine whether those areas are set aside for development or not. The simple answer is it's the state government that does that. What council is trying to do is that another process that closely relates to what we do in advocacy is the development of a residential growth management strategy. What council tries to do through that process is, in an advocacy sense, highlight the need for timely provision of infrastructure and provision of local jobs, and also try and use that process to better manage, as John said, where development can occur. And if it's out of sequence and we don't have the infrastructure, we're now looking at ways in which those costs can be brought back to the developer to be, so the cost of bringing forward the infrastructure are borne by the developer. So the council will in the near future, over the next few months, release an updated residential growth management strategy, which will be trying to do with whatever we can to manage the growth better from an advocacy perspective as well as from a planning perspective. But I come back again, the simple answer to your very straightforward question is, why does the council stop it? The council doesn't have the power to stop it. It's a state government thing.
Thank you, Bill. Other questions? And we have many, more than we will be able to take this evening because we have half an hour altogether. So I ask for your indulgence, but we will try to take as many questions as possible. Please.
My name's Lynette Flowers. I've been a resident of Wyndham for 16 years now. And my question relates to the development again. Are developers required to contribute funds for the roads?
So everybody heard the questions. Are developers asked to contribute funds for the roads? So that's another question for the City Council. John, if you can provide the answer.
The short answer is yes, they are. Linked to those precinct structure plans, in recent times the Metropolitan Planning Authority has compiled what's known as a developer contribution plan. There's really two main ones. There's lots of little ones, but the two big ones for Wyndham are Wyndham North and Wyndham West. They're quite detailed. In a lot of detail, they specify what developers need to contribute to in terms of roads, first carriageways and so forth. And it's quite extensive. It doesn't cover everything, all the infrastructure that the burden is placed on the community, but it is a substantial amount.
We need to increase their rates on the developers.
Yeah, so I think it's fair to say that there is a gap in this developer contribution, so it doesn't cover 100% of the infrastructure that councils has to finance. There is another contribution, and then I'm turning to the state representative because the state is getting some money as well from the developers.
So one of the things we talk about with the growth area infrastructure charges and the pool of money that we collect. Jobs like the Armstrong Ison Road or places like that you described before, John, they're set up to be partly funded by the developers. There is long discussions that we have with the Metropolitan Planning Authority and the tension that we have about having affordable blocks and the contribution that they make to the investment or the infrastructure. Some of that is put aside for public transport because we need to embed some of that, and if we have the public transport in place early, we can get better take up of that, and that's really important. Often what we find, just from recent examples that we've been doing, it costs something like $12 million a kilometre to duplicate a road. Road infrastructure isn't cheap, and that's the challenge where we have we'll get part of the funding through the developers, and we often need to top it up with state funding or other sources. So it's a really good point. And the way we're thinking about it is there'll need to be a matrix or an investment type pathway. We're talking about making a series of a lot of little investments to try and get a better outcome.
G'day, my name's Andrew. I've been a resident for over 20 years here, and my question, one of the questions was answered before. I just wonder why council and also VicRoads, when they do a job, don't do it with the future in mind. Like I was here when between Demerara Road and Palmer's Road. Leaks Road was a bush track. It was a gravel road. It's been upgraded. It's already at capacity. Why doesn't forward plan come into Wyndham and they just build the road once and build it properly for a future expansion? Because obviously you just said $12 million a kilometre. Surely it's got to be cheaper doing $12 million a kilometre once and duplicate the road rather than doing it, then digging it all up again and doing it again. We just see it time and time on intersections.
It is a great question, and it's one we get asked an awful lot. It's purely the size of the bucket that we're working with. I can assure you that when we're doing the planning and investigation work up front for these corridors, absolutely that is done with a view to what is the long-term look of that corridor. So, does it need to have 4 lanes in the future, 6 lanes? Is it going to have a boulevard of trees? What's it going to look like in the future? There's a lot of effort and work that goes into making sure we've got that picture right, so we're not building something out, because it's certainly a lot more difficult to come back and buy land and do other things to build in the future. So certainly we do that planning work. Then it's a matter of how much can we get out of it for the available funds. And there's a real just attention. We spoke before about the needs across the network and our competition with other parts of budgets that are also seeking money. And it's just about trying to squeeze the best outcome we can with the dollars we get.
If we could have a question from this. You want
I was going to add one
Right.
point. That
If afterwards we can take a question from this part of it.
I'm just going to reaffirm David's answer there. The long-term planning, the precinct structure planning process that I spoke about earlier, they do certainly in recent times set aside in those precinct structure plans the ultimate reservation that we'll actually need, whether it's a 4-lane road or a 6-lane road and so forth. That is all put there in the planning. But as David spoke about, it's the available budget that the government provides you year, what you can deliver at that time.
Let's catch up about that afterwards.
Maybe, Bill, you want to say a few words on the work that you've been doing and the impact of phasing the development of road infrastructure, because there's been we have limited capacity to manage the way the city is growing, but we have a bit of capacity and we are using it, and the work that Bill has been doing is important.
Picking up on John's point before about the staging of road activity and what we're getting in terms of developer contributions, we are working and have gone public with a proposition for an $80 million upgrade of Leeks Road to duplicate it right through the residential part, and bringing forward the developer contributions that we talked about. So that's something where we have a bit more control in terms of the sequencing. As the collector of the money for the infrastructure rollout, we can dictate where it goes and when it goes in. And so we will use that to try and encourage developers to work in areas where there is infrastructure provision. So we're hoping through a process we're working through at the moment that we will see a sign-off on a package of works for Leeks Road. As I said, it's going to cost us $80 million to duplicate it. Most of that's coming out of the developer contributions, and that will be our highest priority for Wyndham North. You saw the Armstrong-Ison one for Wyndham West. That's the sort of thing we will try and use, and as I said, in the next few months we'll have a residential growth management strategy back into the public arena, where we are strongly encouraging developers to work to where we can provide the infrastructure and not go places where there isn't infrastructure.
Thank you, Bill. So if we can have a question from, yes.
Hi, I'm Josh. I just want to continue with, I guess, the line of questions here. I want to chuck some figures in, which I think are really critical in this debate. There was a report submitted by Wyndham City Council into the Parliament last year, which outlined in terms of developer contribution plans an $860 million gap in terms of what developers contribute versus what ratepayers would have to contribute over 30 years. That equates in terms of today's terms, and whilst it's probably not fair to use today's terms, it's still good in putting in people's minds. That's $4,200 for every man, woman and child here in terms of an infrastructure gap. And of that, Council outlined that $370 million would be about roads that we would have to pick up in terms of the developments or the PSPs that were outlined before. My question is around, and I sort of understand that this is more a state government related issue in terms of how they determine the monetary value around developer contribution plans, but this is obviously a very critical issue around how much developers give and how much ratepayers have to give for infrastructure that they may never use but have to fork out for. Does Council have a position where they should look at or lobby for an increase on developer contribution given the $860 million gap that's clearly been outlined?
this is another advocacy question, and I'm glad that you came tonight, Bill.
Short answer is yes. As part of the growth management strategy and our advocacy at the moment, we are saying developer contributions need to be increased, and we have information nationally in terms of how those rates look relative to other states. There's a public document that's called, I think it's called Discussion Paper Number 1, that relates to the Metropolitan Planning Strategy, Plan Melbourne, and it's called Managing Growth, and in that there are some tables that show that the Greenfields DC developer contributions in Victoria are lower than most other states bar one. So, and there are the other issue that Council's been advocating for, the 860 million figure, which you'll be pleased to hear is we're continuing to rework that on an ongoing basis. It's actually coming down, which is something that's good, and including on the roads component, it's coming down. One of the other things is that the community infrastructure element has been frozen for 14 years, and the other thing we are doing is advocating for that to be indexed, and we're optimistic that as part of the review of developer contributions that's going on at the moment, it will be indexed and it will be increased.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ishmael, I'm a resident of Point Cook. I would just like to ask the councillors, all of them, what sort of pressure they're putting on the state government, because out of the 50 railway crossing removals, none of them are in the west, Wyndham City Council. And the short-sightedness about Williams Landing Station is only 500 car spaces were allocated, only 500, that's it, nothing else than that. And then we see everybody's parking all through the roads, everywhere, no one's interested, people get fines, people get injured or whatever. Instead of that, why don't we have multi-level car parks, because Point Cook is such a massive area now and it's going to grow more and more and more. And what sort of pressure the Wyndham City Council is putting on the government to remove the railway crossing removals of aircraft station and hoppers crossing station and so on.
So I might ask John to answer this question. How comes we do not have multi-level car parking close to the station here in Werribee, and how comes we don't have it?
There's two parts. So I'll tackle the level crossing question first. We've been having extensive and ongoing discussions with the state about there's two level crossings in Wyndham that are on that list of 50, which is Werribee Street and Cherry Street. Werribee Street probably has a lower priority at the moment, given the RRL's taken most of those trains out, but Hoppers Crossing is not on the state government's list. Aviation Road is, and I touched on that earlier. We are, even though it's not technically in Wyndham, we are working very closely with the Level Crossing Authority and Hobson's Bay on that, because we have a strong interest to get ramps directly plugged into Princess Freeway as part of that solution. The delay in firm commitments to the ones that are on our line that are in that 50 relate to some of the engineering challenges that are faced along this line. We have a standard gauge track, which most other corridors do not have, and it's how that's dealt with as part of any solution. There's also a giant ball pipeline that runs the length of the corridor, which makes solutions such as road under or dropping the rail hideously expensive. So the state is trying to come to terms with how to deal with some of those engineering challenges, but we are and continue to put strong pressure on them, because we want that promise that they'll put a shovel in the ground on this date. We haven't gotten it yet. Touching on the car parks at railway stations, we're certainly aware of the problems at Williams Landing, and we are crossing our fingers and toes that we'll get an announcement next week, but we don't know yet, for increased car parking at Williams Landing, but we'll just have to wait till, I think it's Tuesday or Wednesday that the budget day, I can't remember. It's Wednesday. So stay tuned on Wednesday night and see what the Treasurer has to say about that. Hopefully we see some good news. As for other stations, increasing parking supply in the metropolitan area is a challenging question to answer. Is it the best use of land in some of those instances? The answer may be no. It can get quite expensive to build up at some of these sites, and certainly as part of our integrated transport strategy, we're going to be advocating very strongly with the state to get a much better bus network that will hopefully mean that people can choose to not need to drive to the the station. They've got frequent buses. Buses connect properly with trains, longer spans of hours, so people can feel comfortable that they don't have to rush to get home because they won't miss their last bus. We think that's an important part of the package long term in a metropolitan area to get people to railway stations.
So if I may use the opportunity of the conversation having moved to trains, a question for David that from RACV hasn't been speaking a lot up to now. So you've told us that the metro rail is the first priority for you. Why this choice? Why do you think that this integrated network between road, rail and bus, this is the most important one?
It's one of our highest priorities because essentially we're about giving our members choices. And so there are road and public transport projects that we support so that our membership of over 2 million can choose the right mode for whatever trip they're making. And they can be informed about the impacts and costs and benefits of using whichever mode it might be. We know that a huge number of our members catch public transport to and from work or to school or to education or to see friends or to go shopping in the city or whatever it is. And we know that in some areas of the state, 50% of members own a bike, but only a small proportion, maybe 10%, might actually ride that bike frequently. People can access all these modes and we want them to be able to do it safely and in an informed way and choose what's right for them in terms of their circumstances. It might be a physical issue, a cost issue, other things they have to do, but they can make that decision. So that's part of why we're campaigning for both. We certainly can't have a situation where everyone drives. We need people to make an informed decision about what's right for a particular trip. You might drive to visit a sports ground in Melton with a family member to see football and across town, but I'm pretty sure in most cases that most people would catch public transport to one of the football stadiums to see their team play in the centre city. So same trip purpose, to see football, but according to where it is, when you're travelling, the other people wanting to do it, of course you choose the right mode for you on the end of the day. And specifically North Metro, as I said, it's one of the key projects to enable massive reform, we understand, of the public transport network, the rail network in Melbourne, along with signal upgrades and high capacity trains that are absolutely essential, and level crossing removals. Now there's bad delays at level crossings in Wyndham. We know, I think it's Cornang Road crossing has been frequently reported to be closed for 18 minutes continuously. So not just 18 minutes in average over the hour, but continuous closures for 18 minutes. There are crossings that have been closed for over 50% of the peak period, a 2-hour peak period. Every peak period at the moment. With the increased train services needed on the Dandenong line to support the growth happening around Cranbourne and Pakenham and the City of Casey, if they were to run more trains to cater for the demand, those lines would be closed for 75 to 80% of the peak period. So all the north-south roads will be open for 10 or 20% of the hour for cars to get through. That means people have trouble getting to the train stations. On other lines, trams have trouble crossing them. People may ride bikes necessarily across those lines. This is not the separated crossings for them. So that's part of the need, this massive network reform. Melbourne Metro is a big picture part of it, along with some other, perhaps less attractive projects to talk about, such as level crossing removals, signal upgrades, and trains that can carry more people.
And it was interesting to hear the CEO of VicRoads, John Merritt, saying approximately the same thing. That's the most important project for VicRoads at the moment is a train project that will allow VicRoads to make the best use of existing assets. John?
Just wanted to add to that, for the people in this room, the Melbourne Metro project has huge benefits for the Werribee Line corridor. It directly increases capacity on that line by an order of 20%. So it'll have huge benefits for this corridor directly once that project is delivered. So we're very keen to see it happen out here.
So we will take another 2 questions. I know it's going to be frustrating for some people. Please.
My name is Jennifer Williams. I'm actually from Hobson's Bay, so I'm a bit of an imposter.
Welcome.
Thank you. I do come to Wyndham a bit. By duplicating all of these roads, all you're going to do is induce more traffic to use them. I've read the integrated transport strategy, and I just feel that you're concentrating on business as usual, and there's not enough effort going into finding out why are people driving to the city from wherever. Why is that? Why aren't they on the train?
Cost of convenience. People use their cars because it's convenient to get from
Right, if we can let the panel answer the question, thank you. So, John again?
Yeah, so there's probably a couple of points or questions in that. I'll try and hopefully answer it. As part of the integrated transport strategy, 12 months ago, we did a fairly extensive issues paper, which had a lot of analysis in some of the issues and data in that. The predominant, there's a couple of issues. One is the gentleman talked about people making choices for various reasons about whether they want to use the train or otherwise. A critical issue on the Werribee Line corridor has just simply been one of capacity to put more services on. And that's why Melbourne Metro is going to be so important over the long term to provide the capacity for additional trains. We've seen some assistance with the opening of the regional rail link, which has provided another avenue for people to the north and west of the city who were previously accessing rail services at Werribee, Hoppers Crossing and Williams Landing, can now do so at Tarn and Wyndham. We're certainly keen to see further stations opening up. We think that the next one that will probably be open up in that line, we don't know when, will be Black Forest Station, which is south of Wyndham in that growth front. Touching on the sort of your point about business as usual, the whole purpose of having an integrated transport strategy, we certainly agree with your point that we don't want to just build roads for cars, and that's why we're advocating for increased public transport service, particularly buses, to make use of this space. David talked about sort of the changing culture of VicRoads that is slowly happening, and we would certainly support that. As we move down the track, people won't use buses if they're stuck behind cars, but if we've got a wider road reserve that we can get bus lanes put in as part of that, one bus moves an awful lot of people compared to cars. So we like to think we're working through this, we will have that integrated framework where we can advocate for that increased capacity and better use of the road space. One thing I'd like to talk about is shifting away from the talk of roads being to move cars and freight, but roads are to move people and goods. And how the people move, it's a question of what's the most efficient. And certainly, if you're on the road, buses are far more efficient than cars. So we're very mindful of that, and over time we'll certainly be doing more detailed pieces of work and advocating with PTV and VicRoads to see better use of that road space and fuel.
So last question around here because we've moved from one side to the other. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Joe Shembry. I've been at Cook since 1982. I see changes in Wyndham. And in the chaos that we've got, we have to have a clear understanding of the direction where we want to go. The thing, what we have to really get in Wyndham is jobs. Therefore, we don't rely on the city. There was an accident that happened a few weeks ago that stopped the Geelong traffic coming through to Wyndham. That accident gave a clear indication the jobs that are lacking in Geelong are affecting the traffic here. Because going down Point Cook Road, there was a flow, and I was surprised, and then I found out there was an incident that stopped it. So if we understand the problems that Geelong has, the government, the Victorian government, needs to assist by giving jobs to Geelong. That all in turn will assist us. But where I believe Wyndham has the leadership is that this proposed new city where we can be better than Melbourne. We can lead with technology. We can, instead of this renovation of Melbourne's high-rise, we can create a system where our youth will have jobs. The thing, what we are...
Could you come up with the question? Because I'm hearing a statement, but I'm not hearing the question.
The question I'm trying to alert people is that have a clear understanding of the past, where we're going, and it is a responsibility of our leaders that who has put up their hands to lead, is to direct us in that way.
Okay, so I might reformulate this slightly, if you don't mind, and maybe turn it into a question for VicRoads. How do you manage all this uncertainty about where people will want to move in the coming years, or will have to move in the coming years, when you know that the decisions that you have to take in order to make proper planning is for the next 10, 20 or 50 years?
I think the quote that I put up before from 1954 in some ways explains that it's none of this is a new problem. The same issues that we've been dealing with probably since Melbourne was founded, probably many other cities, or every other city around the world really are true here, where there's a lot of emphasis, I think, on documents like Plan Melbourne to help give us that longer term vision, and those PSPs, those pre-construction plans that you spoke about before, John, to give us that map of what small parts of the network or the land use need to look like to support that Plan Melbourne objective of having a place where it doesn't take you too long to get to the shops, it doesn't take you too long to get to work, it doesn't take you too long to get to school. Things are working together. That's the best guidance we've got at the moment. That's why we put up before that example about East Werribee. We need to do a couple of things, I think, as part of this partnership. We're talking with both these gentlemen actually again later this week. We've been working on a transport network plan in our regional office to try and describe what is the observations of the network now, what do we need to change to support those Plan Melbourne objectives. How do we get people to the employment to come to East Werribee and stay in East Werribee and continue to make that a really important employment centre. So people don't have to travel to the CBD, they can come from Geelong, they can go in other directions. You're right, I'm agreeing with a lot of the things that you're saying we need to do. Sometimes there's a challenge in the gap between, I suppose, identifying it and then the investment needed to make it, get it to fruition. And we need a partnership with the private sector as well, because they really generate a lot of those jobs. I'm not sure if that's answered it, but there's a continuum of works that we need to do to achieve what you're asking.
So we've heard, no more questions, sorry. So we've heard a lot from you through the questions that you've asked. We've heard a lot of things from the panel members, and now I will ask Councillor Goodfellow to come and summarize all the things that we've heard up to now.
So just one last request. Can we have the state representation in the next meeting?
There will be an opportunity after the speech from Councillor Goodfellow to speak to everybody.
Thank you, David, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming tonight. And also on behalf of Council, thank you again for joining us. And to Dave, John, and my fellow council colleagues, it's important that we actually did hear from you tonight and hear the feedback. Now, the key messages that we've heard tonight is growth. How we manage that growth, local jobs, and that is important to bring the jobs here. We've heard about the metro, and why the metro is important to Wyndham. These are all long-term projects, which I suppose is our frustration as well, because we don't see the benefit of a long-term project in the short term. And so we're looking for things to happen. And one of the things that I've always looked at when we look for these things is I try to look for the long term because the short term will actually come once you're looking for those long-term goals. And that's something that will happen. But again, the question was asked over here about councillors. What are we actually doing to advocate and talk to the state government? So I think I'll address that one. We actually do a hell of a lot that you probably don't see, and it's probably council's own misdoing that you don't actually understand what we do, because we probably don't communicate what we do to you efficiently and effectively. We do actually go and speak to governments. We go to Canberra, we go into the state. Now, I've been to Canberra numerous times with Councillor Marcus, and you know it is running, Mr. Forrest, and it's running from one meeting to another meeting to another meeting to another meeting, advocating for funds. And yes, we do get drips and drabs, and we do get some funding for things here in our municipality. What are we doing in regards to transport? Well, from a personal point of view, in 2012, I represented this council in the parliamentary inquiry. Where you've got to go in and it's like, you know, like a little court. You sit there and you say, I swear by what you've got to tell them. And I actually spoke about out-of-growth suburbs sustainable in the long run. And so I represented council's view and your view in that parliamentary inquiry, and there was 2 of them that year, which we did. So we do that. We have the officers talk to VicRoads, and as David said from VicRoads, there are a couple of projects which we are working together with VicRoads on to build the business case. We have to have the business case to go to the state government and say, you know what, this stacks up. This stacks up here in the city of Wyndham. We need this. We have to have this, because all we're asking for is the basic necessities. And I do want to just acknowledge in the audience, we've got one of my colleagues from emergency services here sitting down the back. We forget too that we need the road network for our emergency services. And I'll just use today as a classic example. While I was out with Councillor Fairclough and 2 of our transport champions, Shmo, down the back there, thank you. We're out handing out the regional rail survey. Lo and behold, car accident on Leeds Road. I watched as our emergency service vehicles, my own fire brigade from the other side of the road, had trouble getting out onto Leeds Road because of the congestion. So it's not just our residents and our freight, but it's also our emergency services, our ambulances. This is why this forum is important, because we only can actually achieve anything if we achieve it together. We can stand here and we can yell blue in the face, or we can be, you know, keyboard warriors. If we stand together and stand united as a community, we can achieve much. And for those residents that have lived here like I have for over 48 years, know what I'm talking about. When we as a community stand together and come as one, no force can divide us. And I use the CSR toxic dump as the best example of a community coming together to fight something that we didn't want. So ladies and gentlemen, given our continuous growth and addressing these road and transport issues should be a high priority, not only for us as your local government, but also the state and federal government's point of view. It is an interesting point to note that in Wyndham, in our Laverton North area, that area produces over $10 billion per annum into the economy. $10 billion in the economy. And it is becoming the freight forwarding capital of Melbourne. So we have to address these if we want local employment and job creation and infrastructure. As I said, working together to get the state and federal governments to recognise the importance of these issues we are facing because of government policy and lack of investment in our region over 30 years. We as residents should not accept this, and we should not be laying down any longer. I encourage you all to support our two major advocacy campaigns, the Get Wyndham Moving campaign and the Fund Our Future campaign. Now, an information kit has been kindly provided to all of you. It's in the nice recyclable envelope. It's on your seats. I'll actually give mine out if anyone hasn't got theirs. So I encourage you to actually take that, read it. It has information in regards to our campaigns and the various ways that you, as a resident, can help us with our calls to action. Or you can visit our website, getwyndhammoving.com.au, sign up to our newsletters, monthly updates, submit your road and transport concerns directly to the members of Parliament via our foreign letter performance letters that we actually have. So we're up on savvy technology now, not the snail mail. And we've also got a new campaign. This campaign is the campaign which is the heartstrings campaign. What does congestion cost you? What does it cost you? And I think up there when we walked in, I actually did one. It cost me time with my family. My family is important to me, as I dare doubt that your family is important to each and every one of you. So if you go down and see Marie down the back, get your photo taken. We can put it all up on our congestion cost me campaign. And these personal stories, these personal issues will be what drives our campaign moving forward to the federal and state government. Lastly, I also spoke about the Fund Our Future campaign. We do also have a petition down there, so I ask that you join that. And this is a national grassroots campaign. And this will advocate to the federal government for outer suburban communities across Australia who are experiencing similar issues as we are. I'd like to acknowledge the work that my friend Councillor Marcus has done on that when she was on that campaign, when she was the Mayor, and for 2 years after that, leading the Victorian, being the Victorian spokesperson for the National Growth Area of Alliance. I think she did a marvellous job on that, pushing Wyndham's barrow, but also pushing Victoria's barrow as well. Now, there are 3 key issues in that campaign, and they are roads, public transport, and health. They are the 3 campaigns which we are pushing, and we're asking for the federal government to actually establish a dedicated national growth fund to address the infrastructure shortfalls. We hear a lot of wind coming out of Canberra, and sometimes it blows right through you. But if the government of the day is serious about actually delivering infrastructure and public transport in the coming budget, we as a community must be ready for action, we must be ready to be called to arms, and we must be ready to have shovel-ready projects to actually say that we are ready and we need this infrastructure. I have gone off script here because it's starting to get a bit passionate because I wear my heart on my sleeve and I don't apologise for that. We all love Wyndham. We make this our home. We are here for a reason. But we are only strong if we stand together. We're only strong if we stand united. A divided community will not get nothing. A united community will. And so I'm just asking each and every one of you to go away from this meeting. If you just picked up one thing, take that one thing. Tell your friends. Tell them to tell someone else. Work with council. Work with organisations such as the RACV and dare say VicRoads. But let's work together because partnerships show that we do achieve something. Now in regards to what are we doing in regards to commuter parking? Yes, it is an issue, but it is not the one answer to our problems. It is part of the solution. We must look for an integrated transport system that encourages walking, cycling, different modes of transport and public transport. Because where do we stop when we build car parks? Do we stop at 1,000? Do we stop at 2,000? Do we stop at 3,000 car parks? We need to ensure that we get the best transport system possible. And all we are asking is that we have the same fair share as our cousins on the other side of the Yarra River and the West Gate. I think it's only fair. So ladies and gentlemen, in closing, I would like to thank you again for coming out this evening. I'd like to thank you for your time. I'd like to thank Dave Jones and David Teague for their contribution in this, and also the officers. I'd actually like to thank Marie and Ivy for some of the work, and Dean and Tim for all the work that they've done to put behind this, because I'm only as good as the people behind me. I'm only delivering the message on your behalf. So again, thank you very much for coming out this evening. There will be opportunity, I think, to have cake and coffee and fruit for the healthy options, like me. But there's also opportunity to speak to my other councillors. So can the councillors that are here please stand? Please stand, the councillors that are here, please stand. Right. Councillors will be around here too, so I'll have an opportunity to speak to them, or come and speak to me in regards to transport stuff. But also, I want to acknowledge my transport portfolio team that are here as well. Thank you, because it's your time and effort that is put into the WITS. And again, thank you very much for your time. And ladies and gentlemen, that is it. That's all.
Thank you. This meeting was really good. Everything is good. Your intentions are good, but it has to be